Security grabbed Samuel Carter by the arm, dragged him past the marble lobby, past the gold letters on the wall spelling out the name of the company he built with his own 2 hands. Vanessa Brooks stood behind him, arms crossed, smiling like she'd just won something. Loitering, she told the guards. Restricted floor. Get him out before the board sees this mess. Samuel didn't fight it, didn't argue, didn't say a word. He just let them walk him toward the elevators. And that's when the doors opened. One by one, the board of directors stepped out. 7 of the most powerful people in American business. And every single one of them walked past Vanessa Brooks like she wasn't even standing. There, they walked straight to the old man in the gray janitor's uniform. The chairman reached out both hands and took Samuel's. "Good morning, Mr. Chairman," he said. "We've all been waiting for you." Vanessa's smile disappeared. Her face went the color of the floor she'd just had waxed. Somewhere behind her, a security guard slowly loosened his grip on the arm of the man he'd been ordered to throw out, because nobody in that lobby knew it yet. But by the end of the day, careers would end. Secrets would surface, and the quiet old man who mopped their floors for 25 years would decide who got to lead this company into its next 50. Let's go back, not 25 years. Further than that, 31 years ago, a garage in Auckland, a 22-year-old named Samuel Carter, building a server rack out of spare parts and stubbornness. No funding, no connections, just an idea, and a wife named Ruth who believed in it before anyone else did. She sold her car to help him buy his first batch of hardware. He never forgot that. 5 years later, that garage idea had a name: Holloway Systems. 10 years after that, it was one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. Samuel sat in boardrooms, shook hands with senators, rang the opening bell on Wall Street, with his son on his shoulders. But he never forgot where he started. Every employee, mailroom to executive suite, got the same greeting from him. A handshake, a name remembered, a question about their family. He used to say the company would only ever be as strong as the people nobody noticed. Nobody believed that would ever be tested. Then 19 years ago, everything stopped. A car accident on a rainy highway. His wife, his only son, David, both gone in the same instant. Samuel wasn't in the car. He was at a company gala, halfway through a toast about the future of the industry. He got the call mid-sentence. He finished the toast anyway, because the room was watching, and some habits outlast the will to keep them. Then he walked off that stage and didn't come back for 6 years. When he finally did, he wasn't the same man who left. He signed the company into an irrevocable blind trust, structured so no employee, no executive, not even the sitting board, would ever know the identity of its controlling owner. Then he vanished from public life entirely. Nobody at Holloway Systems today believes their founder is alive. They think he died with his family, in spirit if not on paper. They think the company just kept running on the momentum he left behind, the way a wheel keeps spinning after the hand that turned it lets go. But 3 years ago, an old friend on the board, one of the last people who still knew the truth, made a phone call. "Walter Hines." "Sam," he said, "the company's changing. I don't know if it's for the better." Samuel didn't answer for a long moment. Then he asked one question. "Are they still kind to the people at the bottom?" Walter didn't have an answer. That silence told Samuel everything he needed to know. 3 months later, a job posting went up. Overnight custodial staff. Holloway Systems headquarters. Samuel Carter applied under his middle name. Samuel Reeves, 65 years old. A thin resume Walter quietly arranged as cover. Nobody blinked twice. Why would they? An old black man in a gray uniform, pushing a cart of cleaning supplies. Invisible. Exactly what he wanted to be. For 3 years, Samuel Carter has mopped the floors of the company he built from nothing. He empties trash cans in offices that used to have his name on the door. He wipes down marble in a lobby where his own portrait used to hang, before it was quietly moved to storage to make room for a mural about innovation. He watches. That's the job he actually came to do. Some days, what he saw broke his heart. Some days, it gave him hope he didn't expect to still have. There was Priya Sharma, a young financial analyst, who said good morning to him by name. Every single day, Rain or shine. Promotion year or layoff year. Didn't matter. There was Marcus Webb, a security guard, who noticed the old man working overnight. Shifts never seemed to eat, and started quietly saving him a plate from the cafeteria 3 nights a week. There was a young intern, barely 22, who once helped him pick up a spilled cart of supplies in the parking garage at midnight, ruining a nice suit in the process, never once asking who he was helping or why. Small things. Samuel wrote every one of them down in a small notebook he kept in his back pocket, the same pocket where he used to carry a photo of Ruth and David. But then there was Vanessa Brooks, Chief Operating Officer, 44 years old, sharp suits, sharper words. She joined the company 8 years ago and climbed faster than anyone in its history. Brilliant. Nobody who worked with her denied that, not even the people who feared her. But somewhere on the way up, she decided that kindness was a currency for people who couldn't afford ambition. She never once looked at Samuel. Not in 3 years. If he stood in an elevator, she waited for the next one. If he was mopping a hallway, she walked straight through the wet floor sign rather than take 2 extra steps around it. Once, she made him redo an entire executive bathroom because she didn't like the smell of the cleaning product. He redid it without a word. He wrote her name in the notebook too, just never next to anything kind. 3 months ago, the pace of everything changed. Holloway Systems announced a historic merger. $11 billion. The kind of deal that ends up taught in business schools. The kind that makes careers, or ends them, depending on who's standing where when the ink dries. Vanessa wanted to be CEO once it closed. Everyone in the building knew it. She made sure of that, and she believed all the way down to her bones that the only thing standing between her and that title was optics. A clean, polished, flawless image for the board and the incoming partners. No embarrassments, no distractions, nothing that didn't look like winning. Which is exactly why what happened on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks before the merger. Vote ended her career before lunch. It started small. It always does. Samuel had just finished waxing the marble outside the executive conference room. 2 yellow signs. A few minutes to let the shine set. He started pushing his cart toward the next hallway. Vanessa came around the corner fast. Heels clicking, phone against her ear. Already irritated about something else entirely. She didn't see the sign. Samuel saw her coming. "Ma'am," he said gently, stepping half into her path. "Floor's still wet right there. Give a few more minutes." 11 words. That's all it took. Vanessa lowered the phone from her ear the way you'd lower it if a stranger had insulted your family. "Excuse me. Just don't want you to slip," Samuel said. That's all. She looked at him properly for the first time in 3 years. "Who told you that you could speak to me?" There wasn't an answer that would have satisfied her, so Samuel didn't try to give one. Behind her, 2 junior executives had stopped walking, watching. That's when Vanessa decided to make an example. "You do not address me directly," she said, voice climbing, echoing off the marble. "You do not linger on this floor. This is a restricted executive level. Do you understand what restricted means?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then why are you here?" "Cleaning it," Samuel said quietly. "Same as every morning." That answer, calm and simple, made her angrier than anything else could have. Because it made her look unreasonable in front of an audience that was growing by the second. "I want him gone," she said, loud enough for the whole floor. "Now, call security." One junior executive, Daniel Okafor, tried to speak up. "Vanessa, I think he was just dash." "Did I ask you?" Daniel went quiet. Everyone went quiet. Security arrived in 90 seconds. 2 guards. One of them Marcus, the one who saved Samuel a plate from the cafeteria. His face fell when he saw who they'd been called for. "Ma'am, are you sure you want to dash?" "I want him removed from this building," Vanessa said. "Loitering. Insubordination. I'll have HR draft the paperwork myself." Marcus looked at Samuel. Samuel gave the smallest nod. "Go ahead. It's fine." It wasn't fine, but it was necessary, because Samuel Carter had been waiting 3 years for a moment exactly like this one. Not because he wanted to see anyone humiliated, but because a company's character never shows up in a mission statement. It shows up in the moments nobody thinks are being recorded. And this one was being watched more closely than anyone in that hallway could have possibly imagined. What Vanessa didn't know, what nobody outside 7 people on the board knew, was that for 4 months, Holloway's succession committee had been running a quiet evaluation. Officially, it was about merger readiness. Unofficially, at the specific insistence of a mysterious voting trust holding 41% of the company, it was about something else entirely. Character. Every executive under consideration for the future CEO role had been secretly observed. Not just their quarterly numbers, not just their strategy decks, how they treated the people who could never do anything for them in return. Servers at company dinners, junior assistants, overnight cleaning staff, interns nobody remember by name. The board didn't fully understand why the trust demanded this. Walter Hines had simply told them it was non-negotiable. Trust me, he'd said, this matters more than any of you think. They didn't know they'd been quietly grading their own executives on kindness for 4 months. And they certainly didn't know the trust's representative, the one compiling every data point into a worn little notebook, was the 71-year-old man currently being marched toward the lobby in a gray uniform. As security walked Samuel past the glass doors of the executive floor, something happened that made Vanessa's stomach drop for the first time all morning. The elevator chimed. But this is where we need to slow down, because what happened in the 90 seconds after that chime is the reason this story is worth telling at all. And to understand it, you have to understand what almost went wrong. 3 weeks earlier, a moment nobody in that lobby knew about, one that nearly buried Samuel's entire 3-year mission before it ever had the chance to matter. 3 weeks before the wet floor, before the humiliation, before security, before any of it, Samuel Carter almost got fired. Not by Vanessa, by a mistake that had nothing to do with her at all. It happened on a Thursday night, close to midnight, when Samuel was alone in the executive floor's records room, doing what he always did after his shift, quietly reviewing documents. Walter left for him under the guise of recycling pickup documents about the merger, about the executives under consideration, about numbers that mattered more than anyone in that building realized. A junior compliance officer, working late, found him there, found an unauthorized janitor sitting at a desk, papers spread out, reading things a janitor had no business reading. She didn't recognize him. Why would she? She called it in immediately. Security breach. Possible corporate espionage. Possible leak ahead of an $11 billion merger. For 6 hours, Samuel Carter sat in a small interior room downstairs while 2 security officers and an outside investigator decided what to do with him. Nobody in that room knew who he was. Nobody except Walter Hines, who got a call at 2 in the morning and drove to headquarters in his pajamas under a coat, badge in hand, praying the entire 3-year plan wasn't about to collapse over a filing mistake. He's cleared, Walter told the investigator, voice low and urgent. Cleared through channels you don't have access to. Delete the incident report. This never happened. The investigator didn't like it, didn't understand it. But Walter Hines was the longest-serving board member at the company, and when he said, delete it, people deleted it. Samuel walked out of that building at 4 in the morning, uniform wrinkled, hands shaking. Slightly from 6 hours of not knowing if 3 years of quiet work were about to end in a pair of handcuffs. Walter caught up to him in the parking garage. Sam, this is insane. You almost got arrested tonight for reading your own company's paperwork. Samuel didn't answer right away. I know, he finally said. Then end it. Come back as yourself. Nobody would blame you. Samuel shook his head. If I come back as myself, everyone straightens their tie and starts performing for the founder. I won't see anything real. I'll see a show. And if next time, nobody's around to make the call at 2 in the morning? Samuel looked at his old friend for a long moment. Then I suppose the truth dies with me in a holding room. And maybe that tells us something too. Walter didn't sleep that night. Neither did Samuel. But 3 weeks later, when Vanessa Brooks called security on him over a wet floor sign, it wasn't the first time that week Samuel had quietly wondered whether this entire plan had Been a mistake. It was the second. Because 2 days before the wet floor, something worse had happened. Something that had nothing to do with pride or humiliation or restricted floors. Something that put him in actual danger. Holloway's data center, Subbasement 2, had a pressure failure in the cooling system on a Sunday night. Samuel, doing his usual overnight rounds, was the only person in the building. The system began overheating. Alarms that should have triggered automatically didn't, a software bug nobody had caught yet, buried in code from an acquisition 3 years back. Smoke started curling out from behind a server rack at 11:40 at night in a locked down basement with a malfunctioning door system, and Samuel Carter, 71 years old, alone, found himself pulling a fire extinguisher off the wall with hands that hadn't done anything like this in decades. He got the fire down before it spread, but not before he inhaled enough smoke to end up on his knees on the concrete floor, coughing, alone, nobody knowing he was down there, nobody coming. For almost 4 minutes, Samuel Carter, founder of one of the largest technology companies in the country, lay on a basement floor wondering if this was how it would end. Alone, unknown, a janitor nobody would think to look for until morning. It was Marcus who found him. Doing a security sweep, he didn't technically need to do that. Night, the same instinct that made him save a plate of food 3 nights a week, making him check the subbasement one more time before signing off. He carried Samuel out himself, called for medical help, sat with him in the ambulance, still, not knowing who he was actually helping. "You didn't have to come down there," Samuel said hoarsely, an oxygen mask pulled halfway off his face. "Yeah, I did," Marcus said. "Nobody else checks on you. Figured somebody should." Samuel didn't tell him the truth that night, but he wrote something different in the notebook that night than he had for anyone else in 3 years. Not just an observation, a debt. So when Vanessa Brooks called security 2 days later, and Marcus was one of the 2 guards who arrived, and Marcus looked at Samuel with those same eyes from the sub-basement, silently asking, "Are you sure?" Samuel's small nod carried more weight than anyone in that hallway could have understood. It wasn't just permission. It was trust, repaid in the smallest way he could manage in that moment. "Let happen. I'll explain everything soon. You'll understand why this had to play out exactly like this." Now back to the lobby, back to the elevator chime, and the doors opening, and the board of directors stepping out. 20 minutes early for an emergency session Vanessa didn't even know had been scheduled. Chairman Robert Ellison was first, then Walter Hines, then 5 others, moving as a tight, quiet cluster, every one of them looking past Vanessa entirely, straight at Samuel. Vanessa opened her mouth, already rehearsing the story she'd tell about restricted floors and inappropriate conduct. She never got the chance. Robert Ellison walked directly to Samuel Carter and extended both hands. "Good morning, Mr. Chairman," he said. "We've all been waiting for you." For 3 full seconds, nobody in that lobby breathed. "I'm sorry," Vanessa said. "Mr. What?" Walter Hines turned to her, and for the first time in 8 years of working together, his expression carried no warmth at all. "Vanessa," he said quietly, "this is Samuel Carter, founder of Holloway Systems, majority, beneficial owner of the trust that controls this company." A pause that felt longer than it was. "You just called security on the man who signed your paycheck." Somewhere behind her, Daniel Okafor put a hand over his mouth. Marcus, still holding Samuel's arm out of habit, slowly let go and took a full step back, like he just realized who he'd been standing this close to. Vanessa's mind raced through every interaction she'd ever had with the old janitor. The bathroom she made him redo. The elevator she refused to share. The wet floor sign she'd just walked past out of pure spite 20 minutes earlier. Every memory rearranged itself in real time, and every single one of them now carried a different weight entirely. "There must be some mistake," she said, though her voice had lost all its earlier certainty. "He's been cleaning this building for years. Under a different dash. Under a different name," Walter said, "because he needed to see the company as it actually is. Not the version everyone performs for the man they think owns it. Samuel finally spoke. His voice was calm. It always had been, even 4 days ago on a basement floor, even 3 weeks ago in a holding room downstairs. Vanessa, he said, using her first name for the first time in 3 years. I'm not angry about the floor. I've had far worse said to me in this building than that. A pause. I'm here because of something bigger than one morning. Chairman Ellison gestured toward the private elevator bank. The full board is assembled upstairs, along with a few others who need to hear this. Everyone, Vanessa asked, her voice thinner than she'd ever heard it herself. Everyone, Ellison said, including you, especially you. The ride up in the elevator was the longest 90 seconds of Vanessa Brooks's professional life. She stood in the corner, arms uncrossed now, silent, watching the numbers climb, watching the old man in the gray uniform stand in the center of the elevator like he belonged there. Because he did. He always had. The boardroom on the 40th floor had a view stretching across the entire city. Floor 2. Ceiling glass. A table built from a single slab of reclaimed oak Samuel himself had chosen. 20 years earlier, back when this was still his office. He hadn't stood in this room in 19 years. He walked to the head of the table like he'd never left it. The rest of the executives were already gathered, summoned an hour earlier for what they'd been told was an emergency session ahead of the merger vote. Priya was there, near the back, confused, glancing between the janitor's uniform and a room full of directors treating him like royalty. Marcus stood near the door, still in his security uniform, unsure if he was meant to leave or stay. Stay, Marcus, Samuel said. You've earned a seat more than most people in this room. Twice over, if we're being honest. Marcus sat down, stunned, not yet understanding what twice over meant. Samuel set his gray jacket over the back of a chair. For the first time in 3 years, his shoulders straightened into the posture of a man who used to run rooms like this for a living. Some of you are wondering who I am, he began. Some of you already know. For those who don't, my name is Samuel Carter. I founded this company 31 years ago in a garage with a server rack held together by duct tape and a wife who believed in me before I'd earned it. He let that settle over the room. 19 years ago, I lost my wife and my son in a single night. I lost the will to run this company. For a long time, I lost the will to do much of anything at all. I signed control into a blind trust so the company could survive without me, and I disappeared. Every eye in the room was fixed on him. 3 years ago, I came back, not as the man who built this place, as a janitor, because I needed to know something the numbers could never tell me. He reached into his back pocket, the same pocket where a photograph used to live, and pulled out the small, worn notebook. I needed to know if this company still had a soul, whether it still honored the values it was built on, or whether we'd just become another name on a building. The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Every name in this notebook belongs to someone who worked in this building over the past 3 years. Every entry is something I witnessed myself, not a report, not a rumor. What I saw with my own eyes when nobody thought the eyes watching mattered. He opened it to the first page. Priya Sharma, financial analyst, said good morning to the janitor by name, every day 3 years running, regardless of who was watching. Once gave up her lunch break to help him carry a jammed printer down 4 flights because the freight elevator was broken. Priya's eyes filled at the back of the room. Marcus Webb, security. He paused on that name longer than any other. Noticed an old man working overnight shifts wasn't eating properly. Started saving him a plate 3 nights a week for 2 years. Never told a soul. Never asked for anything in return. Another pause. And 4 nights ago, went down to sub-basement 2 on a sweep he didn't need to run, and pulled that same old man off a concrete floor after a fire nearly took his life. Sat with him in an ambulance without knowing his name, and never once thought to ask what was in it for him. The room made a sound it hadn't made yet that morning. A collective intake of breath. Marcus stared at the table, jaw tight. blindsided by hearing his own private act of decency read out loud in a room full of executives. Daniel Okafor. Samuel looked toward the young executive who tried to speak up in the hallway that morning. Stood up for a janitor being humiliated this morning, knowing it could cost him his job to do it. Daniel looked like the weight of the last hour had finally lifted off his chest. Then Samuel turned to the last page. The room went very quiet. "And Vanessa Brooks," he said. Vanessa's hands were folded so tightly in her lap her knuckles had gone white. Samuel didn't raise his voice. He never had to. Made a habit, over 3 years, of speaking to service staff in ways she would never speak. To a client. Walked through wet floor signs on 4 separate occasions rather than take 2. Extra steps. Made a 68-year-old man redo a completed task out of personal preference, then reported the delay it caused. Called security on him this morning for informing her, politely, that a floor was wet. He closed the notebook. "I want to be clear about something," Samuel said. "This was never a test I designed to trap anyone. I didn't come back to catch people on bad days. Everyone has bad days. I've had more of them than most people in this room could imagine." He looked directly at Vanessa. "What I was watching for was a pattern. And 3 years is long enough. Patterns don't lie, even when the person living inside them wants them to." Vanessa's voice, when it came, was smaller than anyone had ever heard it. "I didn't know," she said. "If I'd known who you were, Dash." "That's exactly the problem," Samuel said quietly. "You shouldn't need to know who I am to. Treat me like a person." Nobody in the room said a word. "For 4 months," Chairman Ellison finally said, breaking the silence, "this board conducted a leadership evaluation for the incoming CEO position. We were told by the trust that character mattered as much as performance. We didn't fully understand why until this moment." He turned to Samuel. "You built this into the succession process yourself." "I insisted on it," Samuel said, "because I learned something the hard way the night I lost my family, and again on a basement floor 4 nights ago when I genuinely didn't know if anyone would find me in time. Success means nothing if you've forgotten who you are on the way to it. I built this company on the idea that everyone in this building matters. Somewhere along the way, some of you decided that idea was optional." He turned back to Vanessa. "You are, without question, one of the sharpest operational minds I've seen in 30 years. The merger numbers, the integration plan, all of it, brilliant work. I read every page you produced." Vanessa looked up, a flicker of something like hope crossing her face. "But leadership isn't just brilliance," Samuel continued. "It's who you become when you think no one important is watching. And for 3 years, ma'am, you showed me exactly who that is." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Effective today, you're being removed from consideration for the CEO position. The board will discuss whether your current role is still appropriate, given what's now been documented." Vanessa didn't argue. There was nothing left to argue with. She sat there, the woman who'd spent 8 years building a reputation as the sharpest executive in the building, watching it dissolve over 11 words she'd once said to a janitor about a wet floor. "I am sorry," she finally said, quietly, to Samuel directly. Not to the board. Not to save her job. Just to him. Samuel studied her for a long moment. "I believe you're sorry it happened this way," he said. "Whether you're sorry for who you were before you got caught, that's between you and yourself. That's not something I can grade in a notebook." He turned to the rest of the room. "Daniel Okafor." Daniel sat up straight, startled to be addressed directly. "You spoke up this morning, knowing it might cost you something. That takes more courage than most executives will ever show in a boardroom in their entire careers." Marcus Webb. Marcus looked up, still stunned. "You've been serving this company with more integrity in a cafeteria line and on a basement floor at midnight than most people show in a corner office in a lifetime." Priya Sharma. Priya wiped her eyes. "You treated an invisible old man like he mattered every single day for 3 years, expecting nothing back. That is exactly the kind of person this company needs leading it." Samuel looked around the table at the board. "The trust's recommendation, effective immediately, is this. Daniel Okafor will be promoted to Senior Vice President of Operations, reporting directly to whoever the board selects as interim CEO during the merger transition. Marcus Webb will be offered a position in corporate security leadership with full benefits backdated to reflect his years of service. Priya Sharma will be moved into the strategy division under my direct mentorship starting Monday. He paused. And as for the CEO position, the room held its breath. I'm not naming one today. I've watched this company for 3 years, and I intend to keep watching a while longer. Not from a mop cart. From this table. He looked at Chairman Ellison. I'm not stepping back into daily operations. That was never the plan. But I will serve as active, non-executive chairman for the next 18 months, personally overseeing the transition, the merger, and the selection of Holloway's next CEO. He looked at Vanessa one last time. Ms. Brooks, you built real value at this company. I won't pretend otherwise. If in 6 months this board sees genuine change, not performance change, there may still be a path forward for you here. That path doesn't run through the corner office, but exists if you want it badly enough to earn it honestly. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't punishment either. It was something harder than both. A door left open, just barely, for her to decide who she wanted to become. Vanessa nodded, unable to speak, and quietly left the room. She didn't come back to headquarters for 11 days. When she finally did, it wasn't in a tailored suit, and it wasn't for a meeting. It was on a Saturday morning when the building was nearly empty and the only person on the executive floor was an old man in a gray uniform, wiping down the same stretch of marble where it had all started. Vanessa stood at the end of the hallway for almost a full minute before she found the nerve to walk toward him. I don't expect anything from this conversation, she said. I just needed to say something. You didn't get to hear that day because I was too busy trying to survive it. Samuel kept mopping, but he was listening. He always was. My mother cleaned office buildings for 11 years, Vanessa said. Nights after her day job. I used to fall asleep in the break room while she finished her shift, and I swore when I was 7 years old that I'd build a life where nobody could ever treat me the way I watched people treat her. Her voice caught. Somewhere along the way, I think I decided the only way to make sure of that was to become the person doing the treating instead. Like there were only 2 sides, and I'd already picked which one I never wanted to be on again. Samuel stopped mopping. Your mother, he said quietly, sounds like she raised someone with real fight in her. The tragedy isn't that you have that fight, Vanessa. It's where you decided to point it. Vanessa nodded, tears finally arriving, 11 days late. I'm not asking to come back to what I had, she said. I don't know if I even deserve it. But I like to learn how to point it somewhere else, if there's still room. Samuel considered her for a long moment, the same way he considered every name in that notebook. There's a community outreach division this company hasn't taken seriously in a decade, he said. Underfunded, understaffed, the kind of work that never shows up on a quarterly earnings call and never earns anyone applause in a boardroom. He handed her the mop. Not literally, but close enough. If you want a path back, that's where it starts. Not because I'm punishing you, because I think somewhere under 8 years of armor, that's closer to who your mother raised in. The version of you that walked past those wet floor signs. Vanessa took a breath like she was underwater for 11 days and had just broken the surface. I'll take it, she said, and I'll earn the rest, if it takes years. It might, Samuel said. That's all right. Most things worth having usually do. 3 weeks later, the merger closed. $11 billion, exactly as projected, except now under an interim leadership team. The board trusted completely, with an active chairman watching every decision through the lens of a man who once lost everything and built it all back from a garage. Samuel still comes into the building most mornings. He doesn't push a cart anymore, but he still walks the halls before sunrise, still says good morning to the overnight cleaning crew by name, still remembers who has a sick kid at home and who just got engaged. Marcus runs building security now, and still, every single night, sets aside a plate for anyone. Working late, who forgot to eat. He says he learned that habit from someone who mattered, more than he realized at the time. Daniel sits 2 doors down from the chairman's office and still stands up in meetings when something isn't right, because he learned that morning it was never really the risk it felt like. Priya works alongside Samuel 3 days a week, learning not just strategy, but the parts of leadership that never show up on a spreadsheet. Vanessa works 2 floors down now, in a division that used to be an afterthought, rebuilding. Something slower and quieter than a merger, but maybe, in the long run, worth more. And in the lobby, where she once stepped over a wet floor sign without a second thought, there's a new plaque on the wall. It doesn't have Samuel Carter's name on it. It has 6 words, the only rule he ever asked the company to follow. Watch how they treat the smallest. Because somewhere in that building, on any given morning, there's still someone nobody thinks is being noticed. A janitor, an intern, a guard at the door, checking a basement one more time for no reason anyone would ever ask him to. And Samuel Carter, of all people, knows exactly how much that person can teach you about who actually deserves to lead.